Good? Good?
You can move over. I want to see what topic. Yeah, let's make more room.
Well, welcome everyone to the fourth and final New York City Agency update of 2023, hosted by the Gowanus Oversight Task Force. I'm Ben Margolis with James Lima Planning and Development. We are the task force's facilitation team. Thank you to the administration, faculty, students of PS 133 for sharing their space. Thank you to Trader Joe's for the discounted chips and water and seltzer. Really good stuff. And then I think we had cookies from Jesse Solomon. Yeah, or SBIDC.
Via Monadnock.
Via Monadnock, right. So some quick logistics. The meeting is being recorded. The recording, along with a Spanish translation of the transcript, the presentation materials, the full list of questions asked and answered will be made available on the task force website, gowanustaskforce.net. If you haven't already picked it up, there is a meeting packet of information that provides very useful background information, including information on tonight's focus areas and the full list of the city's 56 commitments to Gowanus. The task force has structured its quarterly public meetings to focus on public interaction and engagement and deeper discussions with agency partners about specific issues of interest and timeliness. Tonight, the task force chose to dive into sets of the city's commitments that focus on affordable housing and NYCHA commitments, certainly centered on the $200 million in funding for capital improvements, and a set of commitments around support for small businesses and equipping Gowanus and Community Board 6 residents with skills and opportunities to access quality jobs and career pathways. So we'll be hearing directly from agencies leading on these related commitments, that's HPD, NYCHA, and SBS, and from members of two task force committees working with them, the Housing Committee and the Economic and Workforce Development Committee. You can refer to your meeting packet for sort of a one-page framing of each topic tonight. And this is how it will flow. To keep the meeting to 2 hours, we've allotted specific times for each topic with 2 breaks for discussion in each section. So out of the 90 minutes total for both topics, there should be roughly 50 to 55 minutes for discussion and Q&A. So when discussion turns to you, the audience, we aim to alternate between questions that are asked live. We have 2 mobile mics that will roam on either side of the room, or you can write your question on a note card at any time, right? Maybe someone doesn't feel comfortable enough getting in front of the mic, but you'll be hearing presentations and you'll get ideas, so feel free to write your questions on your note cards. Anytime if you need note cards or need extra, just let folks who are roaming on each side know. Some important guidance: questions relating to the specific topic and city commitments being presented will be prioritized. Please ask 1 question at a time and not in 5 parts. And let's just collectively do our best to keep to the time limits, okay? So raise your hand if this is your first task force meeting. Welcome all of you. For those of you who are new, the task force is 30 community volunteers, many of whom you hopefully met on the way in tonight. After many years of planning and advocacy, oversight of the city's commitments was a major community priority during the whole neighborhood rezoning process. So the task force, the number 1 commitment of the 56 is actually the task force, is oversight of the city's $450 million worth of commitments. So this task force is working in partnership with 13 New York City agencies with the strong and active support of Gowanus elected officials to solve issues, to advance those commitments and the investments promised to the Gowanus community. When you take these commitments together, they truly hold the potential to influence quality of life in Gowanus for decades to come. They're multifaceted, they're often requiring a lot of agency coordination, and many are on very different timelines. Some are implemented over years into the future. So the task force works with agencies to track all 56 of the city's commitments. The latest agency updates are available on the task force website on the commitments page. This will actually be updated before the end of the calendar year. So let's get rolling. Up at the table we have our partners from HPD, and we have the Housing Committee members. Just a reminder, and you'll see this information again, questions might come to, again, they might come to you as you listen to information being presented. Just remember to prepare them on your card or to ask live, but just please focus on, try and focus your questions on the topic that we're discussing at the moment, okay? So would the committee like to make a statement and frame this part of the evening?
Sure.
Hi, I'm Ariel Krasnow, co-chair of the Housing Committee with Vaime Richardson White. The Gowanus Neighborhood Plan, which served as the basis for the Gowanus rezoning, had multiple goals, but a primary objective was always to create more housing, in particular more affordable housing, and to preserve existing affordable housing. Where do we stand on these critical components of the rezoning 2 years after the 2021 approvals? What is the status of new HPD administered affordable housing and the improvements to the NYCHA apartments and Gowanus houses and Wyckoff Gardens? For the past year, we have had quarterly updates from HPD and NYCHA, but in preparation for tonight, the Housing Committee, along with participation from Know Your Rights and Take Root Justice trainings, compiled numerous questions that dig deeper into agency procedures and project status. We shared and discussed these questions with each of our agency partners, and they have prepared presentations based on some of these queries. After their presentations, as Ben mentioned, we hope you will join us in further questioning them about the mission they have to provide for and improve our housing stock. I'm going to turn it over to Michelle Delahousse, a member of the Housing Committee and Executive Director of the Fifth Avenue Committee, to introduce HPD's presentation.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for being here in the middle of holiday season. Really, really appreciate it. I think the turnout really shows you how important this all is, and the fact that so many people recognize that the $450 million our investment is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for Gowanus. So, a key component of the rezoning was the housing overall, 8,500 total units, of which 3,000 are affordable. And 2,000 of them are through the city's mandatory inclusionary housing program. And so today, we're really pleased that Hala and Renee from HPD's Neighborhood Planning Division, I think this is the third meeting we're in today together, Hala, yeah, literally, are here to really zero in specifically on the mandatory inclusionary housing component. And I'll just say this, I think people know that housing is a crisis, affordable housing is a crisis, not just in New York City, but across the country. And the city's Department of Housing Preservation and Development is actually one of the most productive, if not the most productive, municipal agencies focused on affordable housing. So we're really happy that they're here to drill down specifically on the 2,000 units in the mandatory inclusionary housing program. I'll turn it over to you guys, and later I'll mention some resources to follow up.
Hi, everybody. My name is Renee Widdison. I'm the Deputy Director of Neighborhood Planning at HPD. And this is Hala Saleh, who's on our Brooklyn planning team. Really excited to speak with you all tonight and appreciate the task force for inviting us. We'll try to be pretty brief with our remarks. Look forward to your questions, and we'll definitely stay after if you have additional questions or concerns. So as Michelle mentioned, we're going to focus mostly on housing that is coming. not planning things 50 years down the road, but things that are actually kind of coming right now. But to start with, I want to give a bit of an overview about what our agency does, and then get into some of the housing projects, and then talk a little bit about the lottery, the housing lottery, which is how the affordable units are distributed through the city. So very quickly, for those who don't know, HPD stands for Housing Preservation and Development. We really have three key components to our mission. First, we ensure housing quality. So if you have no heat and you call 311, we are the agency that sends out inspectors. We preserve affordability. The vast majority of the investments we do in affordable housing are to keep existing affordable housing affordable. And then we build new affordable housing by financing new affordable housing. And so we'll be talking mostly about how we help create new affordable housing tonight. So the way that we participate in creating new housing is really two key approaches. The first is that we finance, in some cases, 100% affordable housing. And Hala will speak a little bit about Kay's Place. You may have heard of Gowanus Green. Those are examples of HPD financed, so publicly financed projects where all the units are affordable. We do that on both public and private property around the city. The second that we will be talking about with NYCHA, we administer zoning and tax incentives. So that's a mouthful, but basically it's things that we're not paying for, but there are tools in the zoning text or tax incentives that come from the state that we essentially administer, and we're responsible for making sure that those are affordable and get distributed fairly. And just a quick note, just for interest, because when I learned this I thought it was interesting, the vast majority of housing that's built in the city of New York happens without our involvement. About 2 out of 3 housing units occur on private property by the private sector, and they're market rate units. So we're responsible for a third of the housing essentially, but it's still a minority of the units. So sort of very quickly, people say, well, what is affordable housing? Well, there are a lot of types of affordable housing, and it is definitely a relative concept. But here are some kind of broad types that we typically talk about. On the far left, public housing, which we'll be talking about more tonight. Kind of people generally understand why and how that's affordable. Rental vouchers are a huge way that low-income Americans and New Yorkers can access affordable housing. And then this thing in the middle, government administered, which is what we're going to focus on tonight. There are rent-stabilized units in the city that were built before 1974, and that's why they're rent-stabilized. And then there's unregulated housing that people may find affordable to them. People may contest this isn't inherently affordable. It's not. There's no tools, but affordability ultimately is, do you feel you can afford your home? So tonight we'll talk mostly about this government-administered category, which is where both the HPD financed housing and mandatory inclusionary housing falls. So the question is, how is this housing affordable? Well, there are 2 tools that we can use and that we do use to keep or maintain affordable housing in this, as HPD. So the first tool is income restriction. So when you see a housing lottery and there are certain incomes that are eligible for the unit, we call that income restriction. So essentially this is a way of ensuring that housing subsidies are going to people that need them. The second tool is rent stabilization. This is something people don't often know, but when we, HPD, build housing, we're actually adding rent-stabilized housing to the city. Usually we think of rent-stabilized housing as being lost, which it is, but HPD, we are contributing to the rent-stabilized housing stock, which is great. So if you end up in an affordable housing unit in one of these buildings, it is a rent-stabilized unit. Hand it over to Hala to talk about Kay's Place.
Thank you and good evening. So we're excited to provide an update on Kay's Place, which actually broke ground in July and is currently under construction. This project is located on the corner of 4th Avenue and 12th Street, and will result in an 11-story building with approximately 43 affordable apartments plus 1 supers unit. The ground floor will provide local retail that's fronting along 4th Avenue, and the unit mix includes studios, 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms, and 3 bedrooms, with a range of area median income from 40 to 80% AMI. And this is utilizing our neighborhood construction program. This building also includes some social services, as well as residential amenities, including a terrace, a community room, and laundry room. In addition to this project, HPD is financing other 100% affordable housing projects, including Gowanus Green, and that would deliver roughly 950 units, of which about 110 would be for seniors, 50 supportive, and 60 home ownership apartments. In that project as well, there would be about 28,000 square feet of non-residential space, a school, and a 1.5 acre park. So I'll pass it back over to Renee.
Thanks, Hala. So if you have any questions about that project, we're happy to answer more questions at the end. So I arrived here tonight walking from the Atlantic Ave station, and I passed by a building that I then realized was a building I was going to be talking about. So it is real, it exists. 375 Dean Street, which is just up the street, is on the housing lottery right now as of about a week ago. So if you were interested in applying, head to Housing Connect. We can talk more about that. But to give you the main level, the high level on this, this is an NYCHA development. So this is an example of a housing development where there is a portion of it that is affordable, and there was no public subsidy that went into this building. So the affordable units are being financed by what we call cross-subsidy, but essentially they're just part of the overall financing of what otherwise would have been a market rate building. So there are 143 units in this building. 36 of them are affordable, so 36 are on the lottery. 18 of those units have something called community preference. So under current policy, 50% of the affordable units essentially have a preference for people who are applying from the local community district. So that project is in Community District 6. So if you currently live in Community District 6 and you apply, you have a better chance essentially of getting one of those units if you're eligible. This, like all other affordable housing, also has set-asides for people with physical or mobility or hearing disabilities. And then to give you a sense, what is affordable, this all can feel very abstract, but it's on the lottery, so you can look it up right now and see the rents, but I also have them here on the slide. So this was a building where 14 of the apartments are at 40% AMI. What that means is that's a studio apartment for $835 or so, and a two-bedroom apartment for about $1,050. There are 14 50% AMI units. What that means is there are 15, these units, a studio goes for about $1,000, and a one-bedroom is about $1,150. And there are 5 100% AMI units, where a one-bedroom is $2,300 and a two-bedroom is $2,800. So those are the actual rents of the units. I don't have the incomes for qualifying on the slide because that would have been a lot of numbers, but you can go and look on Housing Connect right now if you want to see who is eligible for those units. So I mentioned that this was an NYCHA building, so let's talk about what NYCHA is and how it came to be affordable. So this was a new tool that was passed in 2016, and it basically created a zoning tool that could be mapped onto the city that would create this requirement for permanent affordability. So new NYCHA areas are mapped through rezonings. So the Gowanus rezoning, when that occurred, because it was an upzoning and it was adding space for residential development, it became automatically an NYCHA area. So any new housing built in this area has to include a portion of permanently affordable, so for the life of the building, units of affordable housing. And HPD's role is to administer the affordable units by putting them on the lottery and distributing them. And so it's interesting because this was an idea a few years ago when the rezoning passed, but it is very much happening. I'm sure anyone here who has walked up or down 4th Avenue or anywhere in the neighborhood is seeing a lot of development. Basically anything you see under construction is an NYCHA building. The prediction or the plan, essentially, the hope was that about 8,500 new homes through the rezoning, as Michelle said, with about 2,100 affordable through NYCHA. We're seeing it happen. So far, about 550 units of affordable housing have been financed across 9 developments. I made this slide like 4 weeks ago. Since then, there are 800 more units of housing that have closed, about 200 of which are affordable. So more like 750 affordable apartments across 13 development sites have closed financially, which means that the financing is ready, and when the private property owner is ready, they will get the construction going. But, as you can see, most of these are under construction already. This is a quick map just to show that most of Gowanus from 4th Avenue to Bond Street is an MIH area. So that's what happened under the Gowanus rezoning. And there are multiple MIH options. This gets very annoying and technical, but if you're interested in AMIs, a private owner can choose option 1 or option 3, which basically means they can choose to create more affordable units at a slightly higher income, or fewer units at a slightly lower averaging income. So like 375 Dean Street, which I showed you earlier, had some units at 40% AMI and some units at 100, because they were averaging at about 60. And if we can talk more about AMI if people are interested. I try to not talk about it too much because it's very boring and confusing, but this is just showing you a distribution of the income bands that are being served by the housing that has closed already. So what that means is of all the affordable units that are coming, the blue band on the left, there are about 240 of those units that are at the 30 to 50% AMI range. We typically call that sort of very low income, or at the kind of lower end of income and rent ranges. About 40% or 214 of the units were like 51 to 80% AMI, and then a smaller portion, 100 units, are at that 80 to 120% AMI. So the 375 Dean Street, again, a great example showing that distribution across all those bands. And what that means in income, the far left, 30 to 50% AMI is about $30,000 to $50,000 for a one-person household, or about $35,000 to $65,000 for a three-person household. And on the far right, that higher income range is, if I can read it on, about $80,000 to $120,000 for a single person, or $100,000 to $150,000 for a three-person household. So these are all the projects that have financed. So you can pull up this slide if people want to ask about specific projects, but again, you're probably familiar, projects on 4th Avenue, on Dean Street, on Carroll, on Bond, on President, on Sackett, they're all over the place. And this is showing how many of those units are affordable, how many of them are sort of market rate, there's the total, and then the breakdown across the different income bands. So again, a total of about 550 affordable and about 2,200 total units. So how do you get these affordable units? How do you get these rent-stabilized, income-restricted units? You do that through the housing lottery. New York City's housing lottery is called Housing Connect. It's a website, much easier to use than it was 5 or 10 years ago. So if you tried it once, try it again. It's much better now. You can create an application online. You can apply for multiple apartments using your same application, update your application if your income changes or your household size changes, and you can continue to apply to as many lotteries as you're eligible for and you're interested in. And the Dean Street lottery, just so you know, closes at the end of January 24th. So the lotteries sort of stay open for a couple of months, and then they close so they can do all the processing. There are always many, 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 many more applicants than there are apartments. So it's good to apply to as many as you can. So a little bit of contact information. If you want to know more about Housing Connect, you can go to the website. There's a phone number there also if you have a particular case question about your own application. And you're welcome to reach out to me or to Hala if you have any questions, but we'll turn it over to all of you now.
Great, so we'll start, thank you. And we'll start the discussion period. Does the committee want to ask a couple of questions to sort of get this going?
I'm happy to jump in. So,
And then just, we have our professional microphone rovers and note card collectors going up and down the aisle. So if you have a note card, raise your hand, pass it down the aisle. If you need one, let them know. Great, thank you.
Hi all. Thank you so much, Renee and Hala, for your presentation, and also thank you for your work at HPD. Among our questions, so given the tight budget the city's in right now, as 2,000 new affordable mandatory inclusionary housing units are coming online over the next few years, what is HPD doing to ensure that there will be sufficient staff to manage housing lotteries and marketing so that unnecessary delays to getting folks in that housing can be avoided?
Yeah, you can take it. We can pull it towards you.
Let's bring the whole thing closer.
Right, that would require knowing how to, it's all right. Thanks, Monica. This is fine. Okay, thank you for the question. Understandably, you are concerned about the city's budget. I'm also concerned, I'm a city worker. I've talked to my colleagues who run the lottery and who do the marketing, and I said, this is a concern, and they said, we are not concerned. We have staff, we have capacity. And what I would just say for some context.
I'm sorry, one sec. If we can just turn our phones off, we'd really appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks.
No problem. You know, it feels like a lot coming to one place at one time, but HPD is handling dozens of lotteries at any given time across the city, so it's not an unusual amount for us to be managing. If you go on the lottery right now, there are dozens there right now, so I don't think that's a concern.
I'm going to take you to the bank on that one, hopefully.
I'm sure you will.
Any other questions from the committee? Great. Why don't we go to a live question? Raise your hand if you have one, please. Start here.
Hi. So please excuse my accent, but I would have a question regarding the lot between Nevins and Baltic Street. It's right next to a residential tower, and with some neighbor, we did a bit of research because we were wondering why this lot is empty, and apparently, so it's owned by Con Edison since 2007. And in 2021, they suggested that they built up the project to have electrical hubs for electrical cars, so a charging station. However, it didn't work out, so apparently the project failed. And we did actually ask a few questions and dig in the topic, and it turns out that apparently within the next decade, Con Edison is planning maybe to build up electrical substation, which is basically the ugly things that is in Dumbo, like the ugly things, where you have, the ugly thing. And so we were wondering if it was still an idea or a project, and also in terms of money, since it seems that the budget is very high, it's not properly residential, I don't know. Anyway, since apparently they bought the place for 8 million,
Yeah.
we were wondering if there's enough money to buy it and maybe to make it something a bit less ugly and more healthy.
I can tell you that many of us have had our eyes on that lot for
great.
many, many years. And that we've had conversations with Con Ed about other potential uses that the community needs. And we have been, at least thus far, rebuffed each and every time, telling us that they're going to need it for infrastructure moving forward. Now, whether it's a substation or something else, I think the jury is out. But be happy to speak with you afterwards if you want to learn more.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. I'm going to read one from No Card. The Gowanus Neighborhood Racial Equity Report on Housing and Opportunity focused on both Community District 2 and Community District 6 and the need for deepest MIH options to address racial equity and affordable housing and broadening the community preferences for increasing racial integration. Community District 2 was also part of the Gowanus rezoning ULURP process, so why isn't CD2 along with Community District 6 included in the community preference for these more deeply affordable housing lottery units?
Okay. I will do my best to answer this. The long and short of it is that this is a city policy and it can only apply to the local community district. It is not something that we have a choice about. I will also say that the community preference policy is under litigation for people who want to eliminate it. While I know it is a very beloved quality of city policy right now, so there are really no changes that are happening or changes that are possible while it's under active litigation. So unfortunately, if the project is in Community District 6, the preference will apply here. There are very few small lots, I know, in Community District 2. Any project that occurred there, the preference would be for Community District 2.
One thing I just wanted to, mention specifically about the lotteries and the affordability information that Renee shared, that if people have rental vouchers, either a Section 8, a City FEPS, a SODA, or any other rental assistance voucher that helps them pay for the rents that are listed in a lottery, even if they don't meet the income guidelines, those families should absolutely apply for the lottery. In New York City, we have a law that forbids discrimination based on source of income to pay rent. So I just wanted to mention that. And I just looked up while we were here. Market rate studios in the area at around $2,500. One bedrooms, $3,600 to $4,300. 2 bedrooms, $3,800 to $5,500. 3 bedrooms, over $5,600. So really big difference. And I know that's not affordable to everyone, but the levels are significant.
Yeah, thanks. And I will just add on the voucher question, if someone does have a voucher, an amazing thing is that if your voucher value covers the cost of the rent of a unit on the lottery, the eligible incomes don't apply to you. So you could have an income that doesn't qualify technically on the lottery, but if your voucher covers the cost of rent, you qualify for that unit. So just if you have a voucher, definitely check out the lottery. It's a great way to find affordable housing.
Okay, let's go to a live question. Raise your hand, please, in the back.
Hi.
Just keep talking.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Hey. Thank you for having this meeting. I'm really excited about what's possible with the affordable housing that's getting built in the neighborhood. That being said, I'm already very rent burdened living in the community district right now, and because good cause eviction hasn't been passed at the state level, I don't have a lot of recourse. If my rent is raised so much by the time my lease is up that I am displaced from the neighborhood. So I'm curious how long the process, one can expect the process to be from applying for an affordable housing lottery to actually signing a lease. And if I or anybody else gets displaced from the neighborhood because of landlord activity or anything like that, do we have any recourse in terms of holding on to the community board preference or no?
So to your first question, first of all, I would say if you have any interest or need for understanding your rights as a tenant, please, we have some resources at the back, we're happy to talk to you. In terms of the time it takes to sort of get through the lottery system, I said the lotteries are usually open for about 2 months. And then they close. It can take many months, I would say. It's not a year's situation, but it is definitely many months because they're basically going through every person who applied and who was randomly assigned a log number and determining their eligibility. So you should plan for many months. So if there's, I would say, sort of as quickly as possible, see if there are units on the lottery. And holding on to community preference, I do not think so. I think it's based on where your address is. So do with that what you will.
At the time you're being screened.
Yes, yeah.
At the time you're being screened.
So that would be when your log numbers come up in the lottery and you're being screened at that point.
Okay, we're going to take one more note card, one more live if someone has one, and then we're going to move on to our partners at NYCHA. And just a reminder, if you didn't get to ask a question, if your question wasn't asked, all questions will be posted on the Gowanus Task Force website. Questions and answers, obviously agencies need a couple of weeks to be able to answer your questions. But just be mindful that even if you don't get to speak tonight or get your question asked, it will be answered. So the question is, why didn't HPD let the neighbors know that 133rd Street is becoming a shelter? It seems that it was approved on October 27th, 2023. Related, why can't the new shelter at 133rd Street be turned into affordable housing?
So I just learned about this project today. This is a DHS project. I believe we're talking about 33rd Street?
130
130
3rd Street.
3rd Street.
And can you just define DHS also?
Yes, I'm sorry, the Department of Homeless Services, which is a separate agency. My understanding is it's becoming an emergency shelter. Again, I learned that today. It's not an HPD project and not something HPD is involved in, so not something we could have informed the community about. And in terms of why it's not becoming affordable housing,
Well, I mean, in New York City, the city of New York has an obligation to provide shelter to those that are seeking it under previous litigation.
If the question is why is it becoming a shelter rather than permanent housing? DHS has a mandate to find places for shelter, and they have a very tough job because communities do not typically welcome shelter beds and shelter space, but there are tens of thousands of people who need shelter in the city. So that's the best I can do. And I don't know the ownership of that property, so I don't know if this is something that eventually would be redeveloped by the city or if it's private. Sorry, I don't have more information.
I just want to, this flyer's outside, it has two sides. One side, so Fifth Avenue Committee is going to be doing a virtual affordable housing information session at the end of January. You can sign up online. So, a lot of the questions that folks have about applying or if people need assistance in creating profiles and things like that, we're happy to assist.
Yeah, and I'll just say, because I know we're wrapping up, at the back on the table, there are a few resources on sort of the ABCs of housing, which is both for tenants and homeowners. There's information, if you're in a rent-stabilized unit and you have a disability or you're a senior, you could apply for a rent freeze. There's information about that, and there's information about the lottery, how to create an application, how to apply, what to expect. So please grab resources if you're interested, but again, we'll be here to answer one-on-one if you'd like.
Great. One last question for HPD, if anyone has one. Excellent. We super appreciate your partnership, your work with the task force, and in general. Thank you very much. Can I invite the NYCHA team down? We really should have like an NBA spotlight music.
Oh, okay.
NYCHA theme song.
I want to announce this. Councilmember Ressler, where'd he go? Oh, he just left.
We just left.
Oh, gosh. Okay.
Clicker here. Yep. And you'll point it here.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vimay Richardson White, and I'm here on behalf of New York City Housing, Gowanus and Wyckoff, and we have our CompMod team here to answer questions for us. They have been with us since the beginning, and they've been very knowledgeable about what's going on. So you feel free to ask them the questions today about what you want to know about the renovations that's going to take place in our developments in the future. And this is our CompMod team here to my left. And you guys can tell them your names.
Too many of them.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Richard Mumit. I am the Communications Manager for the Comprehensive Modernization Department.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Shirley Fonseca, Legislative Coordinator for NYCHA Intergovernmental.
Hi, everyone. John White, Senior Capital Projects Coordinator, Asset and Capital Management with NYCHA.
Hello, everyone. Wesley Vasquez. I am the new Community Outreach Coordinator for the CompMod project. I will be heading Wyckoff Gardens and Gowanus. So it's good to meet you all.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you. Does the committee want to ask, you've done your framing, BMA? You good?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, onward. Yeah, thank you.
Take this off.
I'm going to do it after their presentation.
You want to jump right in?
I see we're very excited about NYCHA. That's how we like to hear it.
Anderson, get that. Get some note cards there.
I don't know if I should be nervous, but okay. Okay. So as those of you who've been following our journey for the better of the past 2 years, $200 million is being allocated to the two NYCHA developments, Wyckoff Gardens and Gowanus Houses. So we have a brief presentation that will go into the work scope as well as the composition of the Comp Mod team to get an understanding on who's about to do the exciting work that's coming in. So right here is a little bit of a chart of where we are. So Comp Mod in the middle, comprehensive modernization, that's the cool way of saying it. Basically, we're under the NYCHA's Asset and Capital Management Division. Basically, that is the other capital projects. NYCHA has many, many projects throughout its sites, so we are one entity underneath that. Comp Mod is built among a team of seasoned professionals. You have people in risk, procurement, resident engagement. You have construction, safety. So you have quite a bit of a team, an extensive team under the Comp Mod umbrella. They will be responsible for overseeing the design build team. That's the one at the gray that you see at the end. The design build team, I'll talk more about that later, but they're the ones responsible for actually doing the work at the development at Gowanus and Wyckoff Gardens. In the middle, you see something called a construction manager as agent. That is an additional third-party vendor that we are bringing in to oversee the work. They're basically going to be an additional mode of transparency and accountability. Their job is to help the Comp Mod team also provide a third-party perspective on the work that the design build team will be doing. So it's an additional means for safety and oversight. Now, going into the actual design build team, we're talking about a huge team here. Once we bring in the team, these are the team composed of the engagement specialists, designers, architects, you have tenant relocation specialists, hazmat, those are people who are going to be doing the lead, the mold, asbestos work, and then you'll have the actual general contractors. So this is one contract with a huge variety of team that we will be overseeing, both Comp Mod and the CMA firm. This slide I know is quite lengthy, but this is basically our work that we're going to do in terms of with the NYCHA property managers and the resident TA leadership. So they are going to be involved in the selection of the contractors. So in 4 stages, they're going to be involved during the procurement phase, during design, during construction, and after completion. Right now, we're in the procurement phase. Basically, the property management and tenant association representative will be part of the selection committee. They're going to be in the committee that will help us decide who the next design build team is. Very exciting times. And then during design, we're going to have the property management. You know, the design build team will be replacing equipments. They will have to teach property management how those equipments work, how to maintain those equipment, and basically even after completion, they'll have to train them on how to use it so that property management can also train residents as well. This slide here provides an overview of the work scope for Gowanus Houses. So I'll just go over the work scope. We have new elevators, so that is coming through a different source of funding. That is a state funding project. So it's a little bit different from the Gowanus neighborhood funding. But as for the actual funding plan, you'll get the newly renovated kitchens. They're going to have hazardous materials abatement, in-unit heating optimization, newly renovated bathrooms, and then you have the Gowanus Houses Community Center, which is also part of a different contract. That is being maintained by the DDC. This is the work scope for Wyckoff Gardens. This was decided with some collaboration with the Property Management and Tenant Association. So what we have here, you'll see is a little different, is kitchen waistline system. That is a replacement of the entire plumbing behind the kitchen. That is where many felt the funding should have been best allocated. That will help prevent future leaks, future mold, and will address a lot of some of the complaints the residents have made at Wyckoff Gardens. In addition, they'll be getting a newly renovated kitchen, hazardous material abatement, and community center as well, but that is through a different contract, not under the Comp Mod. Here's some of the timeline and next steps on where we are and where we're going to be. So we've completed issuing the request for proposal. The last time we were here, we talked about the RFP. That is the contract that we've issued to any of the interested design build team that wants to bid on this project. We're in the process right now of selecting the shortlisted firms. We've narrowed the whole design-build team down to 3. And so those 3 are basically going to give us an overview of why they are the best candidate to work at Wyckoff and Gowanus houses. We're looking at everything. We're looking at their past experience. We're looking at their capability of funding a project of this magnitude. We're looking at whether they're inputting residents' concerns into their project and work scope. So we're looking into everything before we eventually select the final design-build team, and that we expect around 2024. Resident engagement will begin in 2024, so what that means is once we've selected the design-build team, they will be the ones that will have a meeting with the residents to introduce themselves, what they're going to do, and answer any of the nitty-gritty details about the actual work scope and the relocation process. Anticipated start of physical construction when you actually see shovel hits the ground, early 2025. I want to talk about a little bit of the relocation, which has always been the most concerning part for many residents, rightfully so. So there's a need to temporarily relocate all of the residents at Gowanus and Wyckoff Gardens for 3 main reasons. First, we have to remove lead-based materials and asbestos. We cannot have any residents live in the apartment while that work is being done. Then because the intrusive nature of this work, we're doing kitchens, we're doing bathrooms, we're breaking down the plumbing behind Wyckoff Gardens. So there's going to be a shutdown of water services, heating services, cooking gas. So there is no way a resident can actually live in the apartment while that work is taking place. And then we want to also ensure the fastest and safest means. So all of that in consideration, that is one of the reasons why we had to do the temporary relocation. Yes. So now I do have some good news. People were concerned that they will be moved for a long, long time. After a lot of back and forth, after looking into it, after discussing with the design-build teams and those the 3 shortlisted firms, we have decided that the duration of the temporary move will be less than 30 days. Residents will be temporarily relocated to hotels unless of special circumstances. Those circumstances is if you have residents that request special accommodations, residents with medical limitation, and because Gowanus, there's the elevator work that will take place. If a resident is living in an apartment with only 1 elevator, and during the replacement, it might take a longer time frame for the relocation, so more than 30 days. But more details about the relocation will be provided once we onboard the design-build team. Here's some of the rights, some of the tenant rights that NYCHA is pledging. No one will be displaced. Every resident will return back to their same apartment that we moved them from. This will be provided in writing. Property will remain under NYCHA. The property management will be NYCHA. This will be Section 9. This is not PAC. This is not privatization. All reasonable moving expenses will be paid for by NYCHA. Rents will not go up as a result of this work, and a relocation specialist will meet with every single resident before any of the move takes place. And NYCHA, we will be here to provide support in every step of the way. One of the things we're going to be doing, a few things that we'll be doing, is that we're going to be having dedicated liaisons assigned to each development to help with the move. You've met Wesley here. He's assigned to Wyckoff Gardens. We will have insured and licensed movers to handle the move. There will be storage space provided if needed, and boxes and packing supplies will be provided as well. And that concludes our presentation, so we're ready to take on any questions.
Great, thank you.
I know you do.
So I have a distinct feeling the committee wants to ask a couple of questions, and they'll get us going, and then we're going to open this up. We're going to dedicate the most time tonight to this discussion, so let's shoot for about 20 minutes, and we'll do the alternating between live, but let's let the committee ask first a couple of framing questions.
Okay. Am I asking the one that I want to ask?
Yes.
Okay. So, how you doing, everyone? So, one of my... Okay, so my name is Nilda. So, one of my questions is that I've been attending the meetings for about a year now, and from my understanding that it was, you know, the information that was shared with us is that we were going to relocate between 3 to 6 months, and up until September of this year. And so I'm just trying to understand as from from September to now, as to how did it change from the 3 to 6 months to 30 days? So if you can explain that to me, and what changed? Like what, I feel like there's information that's not being shared with us, and so if you can give me some clarity about that.
So to answer your question, there was always uncertainty with the time frame of the relocation, and that is something we've communicated from day one. Even during the visioning session, even before we started the whole procurement process, when residents asked us, how long are we going to be moving, we would always give them the worst case scenario, because we don't want to say, oh, you guys will be moving for 6 months, but it'll turn out to be 12 months, and then that begins a whole nother dilemma. So we've always extended the actual time frame on when the relocation will take place. If we knew it was going to be 6 months, we would say, well, it will be 12 months. That's the worst case scenario. But now we have more clarity. Now we have more clarity. We've taken into resident feedback. So a lot of the residents that we have spoken with, they've said that they would rather stay in their home and deal with the intrusion of construction, even if that means the construction will take a longer time frame, rather than have to relocate for a long time. So we took that into consideration and realized what is the most reasonable amount that we can relocate them from. And 30 days is the number that was provided, where they will do the removal of hazardous materials, the most of the pressing matter, because we cannot have residents stay while we're doing hazardous material removal. So within those 30 days, we will do the hazardous materials. But the question is, will construction be over after the 30 days? No. So one thing to clear here is that the residents will move back in 30 days, but the construction will still be happening in the time frame. So even though the hazardous materials is done, there can still be actual construction in the kitchen in time frame, because that was what residents wanted. Residents said that we would prefer to be in our apartment during construction, try to NYCHA figure out a way to help us do this, and that's what we've done. We've decided that 30 days is the most reasonable time frame, and then after 30 days, there'll still be construction activities, but the worst is done, the hazardous materials.
I'm glad that you cleared that up, that the 30 days is going to be for hazardous materials, the reason that people are going to be moving out for the 30 days. My concern is, okay, when people come back in after those 30 days, how are their lives going to be interrupted with the rest of the work going on, like as for water, because the use of the bathrooms, how's that's going to be all day, and most people are home, some people have to go to work, so that means that you have to get up at a certain time, and like say y'all can start at 7, so the tenant would have to be out of their house by 7 if they're working people. So I'm not understanding the move back in if the work is not finished. I know no one wants to be out of their home, but still to me that's still hazardous to people.
So we do understand that concern, and that is right now we cannot make any assumptions to how, once the design, we will know better once we have the design build team onboarded. Right now, we're in the phase where we're meeting with 3 of the design build shortlisted firms, and each of the 3 is providing their own proposal on questions like yours. How will this affect residents within the 30 days? What can you get done? And then, what will happen once they come back? So there are 3 different answers that are being provided by the design build team. So once we onboard them, we will have a much more clear answer with the same answer you've asked. But right now, we have to wait until we finalize the selection of the team and the proposal that we're going with.
Other questions from the committee?
Okay, so you can go. Okay, hello, my name is Teresa Davis. I work with GNCJ. I am a Gowanus resident. I am a resident watch leader. I'm also the advisory board chair for Wyckoff Community Center. So some of the questions that my tenants asked me to ask were homebound people and non-English speaking people. How will they be notified about the changes that is going on, and will you have somebody on hand to deal with those people that cannot get out and that cannot come out to these meetings? Also, why is it that is only going to be one representation picked to be on here, and it has to be picked through the TA and the management?
So I'll answer your first question. So in addition to the outreach that we currently have, which I introduced Wesley, so he is assigned to Wyckoff Gardens. We have another liaison assigned to Gowanus. So they are the point of contact within those development. Their primary job is to flyer, to communicate any information, to be the residents' eyes and ears of anything that residents want to know. They're the ones that they're the face. In addition to that, we're going to be onboarding the relocation specialist that I mentioned, the design build team. Once we onboard the design build team, they're going to have their own engagement specialist, their own relocation specialist. And one of the things we have said in the contract is the relocation specialist has to meet with every single resident household. They have to knock on every single resident household door and assess their situation, what medical limitations they may have. If age is a problem, we're going to look at everything. We're going to, even before construction begins, they're the ones that has to meet with every single household and create a plan on that best addresses their needs. Some residents, like you said, are homebound, they are bedbound. That we have to take into account for. So the relocation specialists will be the ones to provide NYCHA with a plan that, yes, this apartment has someone who is bedbound, but we propose this is the way we should handle it, whether we need to bring in specialty vendors that is equipped in dealing with bedbound residents or whatnot, but that is on the relocation specialist. In terms of information, we've already been working to spread information for 2 years. So in addition to the team that we have, we're looking to do more. We're hoping to open a resident engagement office, something we've done in our other developments. We have done so in Toad Hill, and then we have now recently opened one in St. Nicholas, and we hope to use that success to have an actual on-site engagement office at Wyckoff and Gowanus houses where they can come and meet with us at the comfort of their own neighborhood. So that's part one of the question.
I think that would be good.
And the second question was why only one resident representative?
Yes.
So I spoke about design build. Design build is something new to NYCHA. I don't know if, I probably spoke about this last time I was here, but normally when NYCHA selects a contractor, they issue something called the design bid build process. Basically, they issue 2 contracts. The first contract is for the design team, the architects. They're the ones who come in, they design the blueprint, and then once they are done, NYCHA would issue a second contract for the general builders, the ones that will actually have to build what the design team did. Design build, what we're using, is new because this is a law that was only passed recently in 2019 for agencies to start using design build team, which is to use one contract with everybody in that umbrella. So this is a new thing for us. We feel it is much more cost effective. I think what residents love the most is what NYCHA used to do with the design bid build is they had to go with the lowest bidder. They had to go with it. With design build, we no longer go with the lowest bidder. We're going with the best value. We're going with the team who are best equipped to handle this work. So since this is new for us, we are starting out this is the way it is right now with the resident representative and property management. We'll see how the experience happens with design build team. Maybe something might change, might there be more resident representatives, but for now, that is the way for a new project we're using, that is the way that it's been aligned.
Okay, one more thing. About electrical and Gowanus. Are you going to do anything about the electrical? Because we've been having electrical fires throughout Gowanus. That's some issues that people are having in their apartments and stuff, and we had several fires.
So for that, any current issue, so comp mod is not the end of everything here. So any current complaints that are still happening, property management has to be brought into the loop. So the residents will still have to create a ticket and still go with the process. So nothing stops as a result of the comp mod project. So if there are any other complaints like a fire, which sounds very serious, the best course is to go with property management for us. But for comp mod, like, we are the renovation project that we're not going to start till 2025. That's still a year away. So anything in between, you have to let the property management know. And, we'll do our best to try to follow up with the property management, but they are the first line for any complaints like leaks or anything that's happening before ComMod even arrives.
I'm going to come back to the committee. Just want to make sure anyone in the audience, if you have a question, please raise your hand.
Hi, I'm David Briggs. I'm an architect. Can you walk me a little bit through the remediation process? This is for asbestos and lead paint?
Correct.
And are you emptying entire buildings when you're doing this? Or are you doing it floor by floor? Negative air pressure is required? How are you planning to make sure the contamination and the dust doesn't extend to people who are living either below or above the remediated area? How are you going to keep residents who are, I'm presuming some residents are going to be in the building while this remediation is going on, and you're going to be taking the materials down an elevator or stairwell, and so how are you going to protect the ones that are there?
So I don't think you're going to like this answer, but the answer is we're going to have to wait until we select the design build team to answer that. Remember, we're at the process of we already have the 3 firms right now. There's 3 design build team. They're all competing against each other to win this contract. And part of the contract for both Wyckoff and Gowanus is to removal of lead and asbestos. That is the work that no matter who wins, that is what they have to do. So out of the 3 design build team, they are proposing 3 different means of methods. How, like the question on whether it's going to be doing entire building or phase by phase, we're asking them. We're asking them, how can we do this without interrupting residents and bringing them back within 30 days without a drastic interruption in their lives? That is the question NYCHA and the selection committee, the property management, the resident representative is asking them as we speak over the next few weeks. Once we have an answer to that, a satisfactory answer, that is the winning team. And that is the team, the next update, next month when we actually select the design build team, I can let you know this is how we're going with the hazardous material. But for now, NYCHA cannot commit to any response until we select the design build team.
We have a question here, second row as well.
My name is Wesley. I live in Gowanus. Are they renovating the floors and repainting and plastering?
Oh yeah, so Gowanus in the work scope. So Wesley, I actually have a 1-page work scope that provides a little bit more details that I didn't address here today. But you're getting a full kitchen. We're talking about stainless steel equipment. We're talking new flooring, LED lighting, new sink, new refrigerators, new stove. So you're getting quite the renovation in the kitchen. So yes.
Okay, well, I just want to say, what about people like myself? I don't want your refrigerator and I don't want your stove.
You don't want a new stove.
I don't want your stove and I don't want your refrigerator. I buy my own.
Yeah.
So the question here is, you're going to meet with the relocation specialist. So the relocation specialist is going to meet with you, and they're going to take that into consideration. Now, I don't know. Now, unfortunately, this is a NYCHA property, and so, they have to equip with materials that are best suited for the entire property in itself. So it is something you can convey to the relocation specialist when they do an assessment of your apartment. But for now, when you ask me what if I don't want them, the answer is we'll have to see how NYCHA proceeds once we onboard the design build team, and if there's any negotiation or compromise in that way.
I'm going to ask 2 related questions from the note cards. Why are residents engaged after design build selection? And you partially answered some of this. Can you ensure design build considers residents if they're a part of selection, or how can you? And are you selecting the same design build team for each development? Do residents have a vote or say in who is selected?
So to answer that question, we haven't started after. In fact, we've begun 2 years. We've started the whole engagement process since ComMod was created in 2021. Every month, even till now, every month for over 2 years, we meet with the property management, the tenant association leadership, and your Councilmember Lincoln, who've actually played a role in help comprising the work scope, the new work scope for Wyckoff Gardens and Gowanus houses. So we've started engagement long before the design build team. We started this back when we didn't even have the procurement process, when we didn't even shortlist. We've done visioning sessions at Wyckoff Gardens and Gowanus houses. If you go to our website at ComMod, you'll see every presentation that we've ever given, in addition to the visioning session work scope that we've done. In that visioning work scope report is where we found out that, residents are willing to stay in their apartment while construction because that's what they would prefer, rather than having to be relocated for an extended amount of time frame. So the engagement process, even with Wesley, with Jessica, with our team, have started long before the design build selection. Now, once we do select the design build team, all of the proposals that we're taking right now is based on the visioning report document that they all have to read. Like I'll tell you, Wyckoff Gardens, for example, had a very specific selection for paint. They did not want us darker colors in their apartment. Now, if we have a design build team that's saying we're going to do dark paint for Wyckoff Gardens, that's an immediate dismissal because they did not even read what resident input wanted. So we started this long before, and we're going to continue this once we select them. The next meeting Wyckoff and Gowanus houses will have is the introductory meeting with the design build team. They're the ones who's going to have to answer all of the nitty-gritty details about the work scope, about the kitchen, what if they don't want, a stove. So the next phase is the design build team, and engagement will happen. Residents will have say in what their kitchen and bathroom will look like. So there's going to be quite a few phases of engagement.
Okay, can I ask my questions
You
now,
can.
please, Ben?
You can.
Is this on?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So, hi, my name is Monica Underwood. I live in Wyckoff Gardens. I am a member of the Gowanus Task Force and the Gowanus Neighborhood Coalition for Justice. I'm also a co-founder, of the Fury and the advisory board in Wyckoff Gardens. So, hi, Richard. So the first question I have for you is, where's the draft of our written agreement on our right to return to our development? That's question number one. Need that.
Why don't we get an answer then?
Okay.
It's coming.
It's coming?
It's coming. Once we bring in the design build team, once we know the work scope that they're about to do, a very specific work scope, once we know the relocation specialist that they're going to bring in, whose job is to meet with every single resident, that is when the contract will be signed.
Okay.
So remember that I mentioned how the relocation specialist has to meet with every single resident?
Right.
It is during that time that we anticipate there'll be a document that reiterates what I just said about the right to return and not being displaced.
Okay, that's good, because I'm like a hound dog,
I
right?
know.
Okay.
But wait a minute,
So-
I'm sorry, just, so they can't see a sample of what it's gonna actually look like?
Well, the sample is already here, like the one that I just provided about the right to return, about the, the nobody being displaced. But then when in terms of an actual formal document, that's still being in the draft, and we have to wait until the design build team is selected so we know how their approach is. Because like I said, we don't even know if the proposal is phase by phase, entire building by building, or we don't know that yet. We just know there's certain things we stipulated. We stipulated the work scope that they need to do. We stipulated the 30-day return, and we stipulated the fact nobody is going to be displaced or right-sized. That's what they have to work with.
And also with a temporary relocation be in our area, and how will they be handling special accommodations for Wyckoff and
Yes,
Gowanus?
so it will always be around your area, and right now, majority of the area that we're looking into are hotels because of the shortage of the stay, because it's 30 days. So in addition to the vacant apartments that we're holding within Wyckoff and Gowanus houses, we're also going to be looking at hotels. Now, there are going to be,
The
there are
good
those.
hotels, right?
The good hotels, you know.
They got some bad ones, and we don't want to stay there.
Right, we understand that. So, in terms of how special need residents, that is when the relocation specialist comes in. Because what we're doing now, the work that we're doing is all of the preliminary work for the design build team. So you have someone like Wesley over here, he's meeting with resident, and his whole purpose is to let them know that this is the residents we have met with, you know, to warm up their whole introduction. Because, you know, if you have a relocation specialist just come in here, you know, they're gonna be welcome like strangers.
Right.
So we're here to do the preliminary work to make sure that, you know, we spread the message. And then once the relocation specialist comes in, they're the ones that will have to do a little bit more in-depth work. Like for us, we noticed that there's some apartments that, you know, won't let us in. They won't say, you know, if you're not, just go away. But then the relocation specialist will have to get a hold of the resident,
Okay.
you know, because we have to let them know whether that is working with property management or whether that's working with a social service firm. That is what they have to do. They have to meet with every single resident apartment, and they have to create the plan, the individualized selection.
And I have one more, and you're saying that Wesley is the go-to person? Does he have a card for Wyckoff, so I can hound him also?
Of course, but I know you hound me a lot, so,
Definitely,
you know.
that's my job. And the last question is, will they be doing any electrical wiring? Because the wiring is terrible in our apartments, really.
At this time, from the work scope we've seen, I do not anticipate any electrical wirings for Wyckoff Gardens or Gowanus houses. I don't know if the kitchen and bathrooms might entail certain shifting around the wirings. We don't know that until, you know, we get much more
Are you
clarity.
doing the bathrooms in Wyckoff?
For Wyckoff, no, not the bathrooms in Wyckoff.
Why?
Why are they out of scope?
Why is
Because that was
out?
the selection that was made by the Wyckoff Gardens residents. Majority of the residents in Wyckoff Gardens had issues with their leaks. There were a lot of complaints. When we spoke with the property management, in addition to the council member, they've detected that a lot of their issues are stemming from the kitchen area, which results in leaks throughout their entire apartment. So that means that we had to make a decision that whether we're going to do a much more comprehensive work scope in the kitchen at the cost of the bathroom, or do we go on both sides? There was a disagreement saying that what is the point of NYCHA fixing and renovating the kitchen, but there's the risk of it all being destroyed because of the constant leak that is present in Wyckoff Gardens. And so as a result of that information that was brought back to NYCHA, we've decided to propose if they wanted us to do a kitchen waistline system, and that was an agreement taken by the TA leadership, property management, and your council member.
What about the floors?
There are plans to do the floorings, but in terms of apartment-wide, we don't know yet. There are certain things, so there are two types of work scopes design build has to do. There is the preliminary baseline. Everything that I've just mentioned, that is what they have to do. Now, if they, you know, they want to look more attractive to NYCHA saying that we want this contract, we're able to extend the budget even more to provide floorings. Those are called betterments. There is the baseline, like they have to do like the kitchen plumbing in Wyckoff, they have to do the bathrooms in Gowanus. But then if there's additional betterments, like they are saying that, yeah, well, we could paint the entire apartment, we can do the floor in the apartments, that is something that they're also proposing. I don't know that
And
yet.
the bathrooms?
For,
What
that's,
you talking about?
it depends if that is part of their proposals. I don't know, these are confidential meetings that the design build team is currently having with the NYCHA selection committee. Once we have an actual, like every work scope can only be confirmed once we select the design build team. But for now, only the work scope that I have mentioned for each of the sites, that is what we know for certain that's going to take place. Any other extra, the betterments, the flooring, we'll have to wait and see once we select the team.
Okay, we know there are tons of more questions. We do have another section tonight focusing on small business support and workforce development for residents. So let's do 5 more minutes here, and let's take one from the audience.
Hi. Hi, thanks a lot. My name's Milan Powell. I work with Fifth Avenue Committee. I feel as though what is something that is really askew in terms of like getting this information and sort of the answers that you're providing is that like the missing piece, and I think another question brought this up earlier, is like engaging the residents who are going to be impacted to a larger degree. And I just really wonder, because that's how best you find out what their needs are, what it is that is missing for them, what you can actually comprehensively modernize for them that will make their lives easier. And I'm just so curious why it feels like you guys are not putting as much effort to engage as many people in this decision-making process and be at the table along with, the design build firms and things like that. Because it really is a huge red flag to me to see that you guys are only interested in having one basically community representative or residential representative in addition to the way in which they're being chosen. It just seems inadequate. And I really want you to speak to that, because we have residents here asking questions about why isn't this being taken care of or this being fixed? And I feel like they wouldn't be asking those questions if they were at the table helping to make those decisions more acutely. So that's what I want to know.
So thank you for that question. And engagement is always a difficult, tough subject, because you're never going to get 100% at all times. But I do have to respectfully disagree with our engagement. In fact, if there's one thing that NYCHA have done, and since 2 years, 2 years when I done a presentation like this, I had no information to share them about the procurement process. I had no information to tell them about any of the work scope. I had nothing. So residents looked at me and said, "Why are you here?" And so our response was, because we want to make sure we're transparent and that we're always here, and that we want to make sure the messaging that we're giving remains as constant, that you get to know me as a person. But over time, now 2 years later, we know what the work scope is. We finalized the work scope because of engagement. The resident engagement has been very solid, but at the same time, is there always room for improvements? Yes, we need more resident assistance. Whenever we have any meetings that we've done a meeting back in September at Gowanus where we had over 200 people, but the development has over 1,500 residents. When we do flyering that goes door to door in multiple languages, when there's phone calls being done, when there's actual door knockings being done to 1,000 doors, but you have only 200 people coming out, that's really, it just shows that some residents are not interested until it affects them, and then by then, they'll ask, where were you guys all this time? But unfortunately, we've always been here. We are here. That we're accessible. We have a hotline. We have a bilingual hotline in 4 languages. Any languages that they need, we've accommodated. Arabic, Bengali, we have accommodated every language. We just want more residents. We would love a full turnout, but that's not always the case. But we've had a significant turnout in, I would say, our effort in the past 2 years. We would say a good majority of the residents in Wyckoff Gardens, Gowanus houses are aware. We make our presence known every month when we meet with the TA leadership, when we go to family days, when we meet with their general TA meetings that they do every month, in addition to having our quarterly meetings, the larger update meetings that we do. So I would say that, yes, it's tricky because some residents are just not interested. When we do door knockings at Toad Hill, let me give you an example at one of our sites. Toad Hill Houses is another comp mod project that's in Staten Island. We've begun door-to-door engagement. Out of 512 units in Toad Hill Houses, we've door knocked close to 400. 400 residents, that's over 85% residents know about the comp mod project. That is what we anticipate doing in Wyckoff and Gowanus houses as well once we establish an engagement office. But in terms of pre-engagement, there's a lot been done. The visioning report, we took a poll that is inside our visioning report with over 300 residents at Gowanus, over 200 in Wyckoff Gardens. That is how the work scope was determined. So a lot of the design build team, this ultimate selection, accounts for everything the residents wanted based on the report, based on the meetings that we have done. So I will have to say that engagement has been strong, and we're always looking to make it stronger. As you know, we'll never get 100% target, but we'll be very close, especially when we onboard the relocation specialist. And so,
But it feels almost as though, in some regards, you guys have said, we're going to engage you to this point and then stop. Which is part of the point that I'm trying to make about these individuals not being in the room during the selection process, and then sort of a schism in understanding for residents about why something is not a part of the scope of
can put up flyers and knock on doors, but I feel like as a city entity doing this for who knows how many homes, maybe there needs to be an extra little bit of effort put in so that people don't come here with those feelings. You know what I mean? I think that what I'm asking is why aren't you guys going a step further?
Maybe I'll just reframe it. So there are going to be things that the comp mod is not going to be able to address. And so I think some of the questions are, what's the next step? Like, what's the next step for things that aren't going to be able to be accomplished with comp mod, with the 200 or so million? I think in the end it's going to cost more than 200 million. And then, of course, we all know that, the rents in NYCHA, because it's such affordable housing, don't really cover the cost of maintenance. We don't want to be in another situation or 10 or 15 or 20 years from now that we have deferred maintenance. So what you talked about the more immediate, but I think what happened about things that are outside of this scope, how is NYCHA thinking about that, and then what's the long-term plan to ensure that any repairs are maintained in good repair?
Okay, so we provided you that and many other questions as well, so we'll work with you on answering them. Appreciate there's a ton of more questions. I know there's a ton of more comments and questions on this. We have 40 minutes left, and we do want to get to our partners at Small Business Services. So just remember, if you didn't ask a question or you think of one later on, you can send it in, info@gowanustaskforce.net. We'll flash that email address again tonight. But really appreciate you guys, the work that you're doing, showing up and answering questions and continuing to work with the community and residents.
Does he have a card?
Okay, Wesley will give you his information.
Okay.
I also just want to make an announcement. There's a flyer here. We also have folks from NYLAG. We have Miles and Sophie here from NYLAG. Fifth Avenue Committee is going to be doing a Know Your Rights information session for tenants on January 30th. Please spread the word.
Great. Let's do a big switch. We'll have the Economic and Workforce Committee members come up, and we'll have our partners from the Department of Small Business Services, SBS, as well. You can say it. Jesse and Jessica are coming up. Hi. So you have a clicker here. If you just point it, it's here, but you can point it anywhere near the computer and it should roll. It's a little bit of a delay. So the committee's going to start off and frame this a little bit. Okay. Great, thanks everybody. So we're going to get started with the second focus area, which is small business support and workforce development for residents. If we could have everybody take a seat or at least quiet down a little bit. Thanks everybody, thank you. Okay, we're going to have the committee members frame this a little bit, the discussion, second part, the discussion of the night, and introduce themselves.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Jessie Solomon. I'm the Executive Director of Southwest Brooklyn Industrial Development Corporation, SBIDC. I'm the co-chair of the Economic Development and Workforce Committee. So you all know, SBIDC provides free services to small industrial and manufacturing businesses and also workforce development services and training to folks in Gowanus, Red Hook, and Sunset Park. I'm here today with two of my other committee members, so I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves.
My name is Jessica Tolliver. I am the co-owner of Brooklyn Music Factory. We are a small business in Gowanus when we opened in 2010.
You already know me, Michelle de la Luz from the Fifth Avenue Committee. I'll just say one of the things that we do is workforce development and adult education, literacy, and bridge programs.
So while GNCJ was advocating for a lot of public investments in the Gowanus neighborhood, through the rezoning, one of the things that came up that people really felt was important to prioritize were public investments in small businesses, helping them grow, helping them remain here in Gowanus and fight displacement of the existing small businesses, particularly in the manufacturing community here in the neighborhood, and also workforce development services, in particular bridge programming to help local folks in Community Board 6 access some of the great job opportunities that are here in the neighborhood.
All right, 1 second, Jesse. Sorry, in the back. I know there's a lot of discussion you want to continue with. If you could take it to the hall, thank you. Appreciate it.
Great, thank you everyone. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to our colleagues over here at New York City Small Business Services. They are here to talk about the commitments that the city made to help support small businesses and workers in Community Board 6, specifically in Gowanus.
Thank you, Jesse. And thanks to everyone for being here tonight. It's a pleasure to see you. Good evening, my name is Dinah Shell Gross, and I'm the Executive Deputy Commissioner at the New York City Department of Small Business Services. I'm joined here tonight by Assistant Commissioner Michelle Clark from our Workforce Training Team, Deputy Chief of Staff Haris Khan, and our Rezoning Manager, Tanya Martinez. And also here in the first row is the Executive Director of Construction Industry Partnerships. That's Tim Currier from our Mayor's Office of Talent and Workforce Development. I want to thank you to the Gowanus Oversight Task Force for giving SBS the opportunity to share progress on the commitments for SBS and the points of agreement. Did I get it? Oh, went too far. You
can do that.
There. For your awareness, the Department of Small Business Services is a city agency that works to create economic security for New Yorkers by connecting New Yorkers to good jobs, creating stronger businesses, and building thriving neighborhoods across the 5 boroughs. SBS is committed to delivering on the Gowanus points of agreement in a strategic and thoughtful manner. We will be sharing our progress on these commitments as it relates to outreach, business relocation grants, and workforce training investments. SBS's Mobile Outreach Unit, also known as MOBI, is deployed monthly to Gowanus as per the points of agreement. In 2023, we have engaged with over 285 New Yorkers, connecting residents to workforce and business services. So these aren't just casual interactions, a hi and a bye. We're actually working to register residents in our systems to provide substantial services. In 2023, SBS deployed MOBI more times in Gowanus than to any other neighborhood in the city of New York, and that's due to our commitment to executing on the points of agreement. Our next mobile outreach unit is scheduled for tomorrow, from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. at 262 Butler Street, and we're doing that event in collaboration with Community Housing Innovation. So please feel free to share that information with friends and family that are looking for employment, looking to open a business, or require other business supports. That's again tomorrow from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. at 262 Butler Street. The city is committed to establishing a Gowanus Business Relocation Grant Program to support businesses that were directly displaced by the rezoning, and that support will be the relocation of eligible relocation expenses up to a maximum of $50,000 per business. According to the eligibility criteria described in the points of agreement, to be eligible for the grant, businesses must demonstrate that they were directly displaced due to the rezoning. They must demonstrate a business loss associated with that displacement and evidence of relocation expenses. Businesses also must meet the federal government's SBA definition of small businesses, and depending on the industry, that can be based on revenues or the number of employees in that business. And the business must have been in operation in the neighborhood at the time of the rezoning, November 2021. So for any business that suspects that they were directly displaced by the rezoning, we recommend that those owners remain up to date on your tax filings and maintain evidence of business loss and those relocation costs. Whenever there's an emergency program to support businesses or any other type of government intervention to support small businesses, those proofs are at issue, and we've got to do our due diligence in bringing businesses into the program, not just to make strong decisions, but to survive audits. They may happen long after the program, so we want to administer the program in a way that is responsible and reliable and provide certainty for the small business owners who participate. And that means, asking the right questions, but also documenting eligibility, and that will require paperwork. Giving that advice now, even though the program hasn't launched, to be up to date on those filings and maintain that documentation. Establishing this grant program requires SBS to go through a rulemaking process. So the points of agreement, has a brief but fairly detailed description of the points of eligibility. But anytime, there's legislation or, something like those details in the points of agreement, there's lots of questions about eligibility that can still arise. And through the rulemaking process, we provide additional detail, so we're providing clear insight to the public. Businesses will be able to, predict whether or not they're likely to succeed in an application to the program and understand how to demonstrate their eligibility for the program. And so we are in the process of drafting those rules. We expect the final rules to be published by the end of this fiscal year, so that's the end of June 2024, with a program launch immediately thereafter at the start of the next fiscal year, so that's in July of 2024. The rulemaking process is, it's not always people in a room like tonight, but it's a democratic process, so it's meant to provide an opportunity for comment by the public. We will publish a draft rule first, expressing all of the eligibility criteria and details of the program, and any interested member of the public, business owner or not, can comment on those draft rules, participate in the public hearing. We take those comments into consideration and then publish a final rule that describes what the program will look like. So all of that will be happening this spring, and we will work closely with local stakeholders here in Gowanus, including the members of the task force, local elected officials, council members Hanif and Ressler, and local nonprofit partners like the SBIDC and the Fifth Avenue Committee, to make sure that the community is aware of all of those milestones in the process, and you don't miss the opportunity to review the draft rules, comment on them, participate in the public hearing. So I'm going to move on to talk about the MWBE program. MWBE stands for Minority and Women-Owned Business Enterprises. And this is a program that the city has operated for more than 30 years to connect businesses owned by minorities and women to opportunities to grow through government contracting. Through the Gowanus Points of Agreement, SBS was committed to work to increase the number of certified MWBE businesses in Gowanus by 50%. And our goal was to meet that target by the close of July 2023. We did not surpass that threshold, but we did and will continue to promote the MWBE program to all interested businesses in Gowanus and to review program applications from Gowanus. Businesses have to meet specific eligibility criteria to certify as MWBEs, so that's being owned by an ethnicity that's recognized under the program. The majority business owners must be Black, Hispanic, Native American, Asian Indian, Asian Pacific, or women of any ethnicity. And the business has to have been in operation for at least a year. And most importantly, the business has to be interested in working with the city as a vendor, in growing through government contracting. So not every business that has the public as a primary client is going to be interested in or benefit from MWBE certification, but we want to get out the word that the services that are part of the certification program are available to businesses in Gowanus, and we really work to support any business in applying to the program, and once they're in the program, in connecting connecting to contracting opportunities. So MWBEs get one-on-one technical assistance, mentorship programs, webinars, workshops, and networking events. And we also provide financing assistance for MWBEs, recognizing that entering into a contract with the city can have upfront costs that are significant. So these are not grants like in the relocation program, but loans that must be paid back. But we support businesses in tying those that repayment schedule to the payments that they will earn under the contract, so that they're not, businesses that are trying to get their foot in the door have a way to do that, perform successfully, support the city's needs, and grow. So those loans can be $1 million, and we cap the interest at 3%. And again, the repayment schedule is tied to their contract payment schedule. We promote MWBE certification whenever we conduct outreach with MOBI or when visiting businesses door to door, and we also hold in-person and online workshops for MWBE certification. If this is of interest to you or of any businesses that you're aware of, you can get connected with us today. I did bring my business cards, which I don't always remember to do, and I'm happy to share those with you, and the application is actually available online. Okay, with that, I'm going to pass the mic.
Well, let's pause, thank you.
Sure.
Let's pause there for questions just on what we've heard in terms of the commitments on small business support. Does the committee want to ask one to get us going?
Thank you so much. I have a two-part question about the reimbursement grant. The first is what is the total budget for that grant? And the second is what will happen to that money if it is not all awarded to eligible businesses?
So in terms of the total budget for the grant, it's allocated year by year. If it's all right, we'll follow up with details on the budget that has already been allocated. In terms of the question on what happens to unutilized money in the budget from year to year, if you've been watching the news at all, you've heard the mayor and other community organizations, elected officials talk about the city's fiscal situation. So, it's definitely clear that it's tough times from a budget perspective. However, we have worked hard to protect funding for these programs, and they are not threatened in the current budget cuts. Generally, if funds are unused from year to year, city agencies have a couple of options. They can request for them to be rolled over to subsequent fiscal years, and funds that are not rolled over or repurposed go back to the general fund. So they're just with OMB for reallocation. However, we believe we have sufficient funds in the program to fully reimburse all eligible businesses up to the grant maximum.
Question from the audience. So microphone coming if you want it.
Changing the way you do recruitment in order to get to maybe meet the next year's goal of the MWBE program?
Yes, we are trying some new recruitment strategies. Our MWBE program citywide has a new director in Michael Garner. So we're going to be doing some targeted industry recruitment for areas where the city's spend is anticipated to grow. Our goal really is to bring businesses into the program that perform work in areas where the city's work is growing, so that it's not a frustration to them and they can actually grow through participation in the program. So we hold borough forums, we held our procurement fair at the Barclay Center with nearly 1,000 firms, but we'll be doing some industry-specific recruitment activities, both virtual and in person, for areas where the city's spend is growing.
Just from the note card related, and you touched on this, but how many MWBE firms are there in Gowanus, and has SBS met the goal of increasing that by 50%?
We did not meet the goal of increasing it by 50%. At the end of June, there were just over 200 certified MWBEs in Gowanus. Our goal was to increase that to more than 300. We do have applications from other firms in Gowanus in our pipeline for review. It's quite a significant process to document not just who owns your firm on paper, but who's controlling the day-to-day operations. We want to be sure that in such a, sensitive program that we really know who's running the show, and also that they're equipped to contract with the city. So we look quite a bit at their, financials and taxes, things of that nature. So we're continuing to grow that number. We did not meet the 50% increase in 2 years, but we are continuing to grow it, and more importantly, to connect those firms to opportunities to perform on city contracts.
Great. Thank you. Michelle?
Thank you, Donna Shaw. It's great seeing everyone. I see some familiar faces from the last time I was here, so thank you for coming to hear about the exciting workforce opportunities that we are bringing into the community. SBS is committed to fulfilling the 3 workforce-related points of agreement. We assess community need, and we look at industry demand. We engage with the Gowanus Task Force, and we work closely with the Mayor's Office of Talent and Workforce Development to develop what we believe is a comprehensive multi-year workforce strategy to connect community of Gowanus to opportunities and job trainings. Once we receive the feedback, we develop potential training programs. We identify the best procurement method to deliver these services as quickly as possible, and we're currently finalizing that plan. So we're excited to relaunch an initiative that is in line with the city's Pathways to Inclusive Economy, which speaks a great deal about apprenticeships. It's called the Apprentice NYC Advanced Manufacturing Program. This program is going to train participants with in-demand skills in the high-growth occupations and connect residents to apprenticeships as CNC machinists, welders, and industrial mechanics. The really core components that we wanted to be very sensitive to that were in the points of agreement that we wanted to ensure that this program model incorporated was the ability to have bridge curricula, so bridge pre-training, that there would be job skills training built into the program, that there would be connection to employment, which we're able to do through our employer partners who will bring on apprentices and oversee their on-the-job training, that there's going to be a dedicated recruitment strategy for NYCHA residents and CBC. CBC, is it called? Yeah? Yeah, CB6, sorry. And that we're also doing this timeline in a way that's going to be thoughtful to incorporate a recruitment partner to help us to identify talent for that opportunity. We're also looking at another industry that was very much in demand. We heard that advanced manufacturing, the industrial sector, was of interest to the community, but also sustainability or green or construction-related opportunities and occupations. So with that in mind, we're looking to launch the HVAC pre-apprenticeship training program. Similar type of model, there's going to be some foundational curriculum that's going to help prepare people to be in occupations working in HVAC, heating and cooling systems, refrigeration. This opportunity is going to be targeted again for NYCHA residents that are again CB6. Yes, of course, making sure. And then, of course, we're going to have job connection support at the end of the training model. So we just want to make sure that those are incorporated into the design of the programming. I'm going to pause here. The third point of agreement that we're very sensitive to, we've been hearing this throughout the evening, is about outreach and recruitment. How are residents going to know about the work that's being done? We want to engage a recruitment partner to have a very thoughtful and comprehensive recruitment strategy. An RFP was released today to identify that partner. So we're looking forward for people to, apply to this opportunity. There's some timelines that we are going to be able to share. Questions for the RFP are going to be due December 28th, and proposals are going to be due on January 12th. So our hope is that we're able to engage a partner who will make deep relationships with the community to help us identify talent to be eligible participants in these training programs. Okay. And on the last note, we just wanted to be very, very appreciative to the Gowanus Task Force. We're very excited to launch these training programs that focus on Gowanus residents, If you want to hear about any of our services, feel free to contact us. We're excited to launch this programming. It's something that we've been planning for many, many months. We've been in conversation for many, many months. We've been listening to what the community needs are. We've been reading materials. We've been engaging industry. We're looking at jobs that are not only important today, but they're important tomorrow for the city's long-term sustainability goals. We want to ensure that Gowanus is part of the way the city is thinking about for its future, not just for where it is at this moment. So what's exciting for us to come up with occupations that are in demand and integral to how the city reaches its sustainability goals moving forward. Excuse me.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's do some questions on workforce development, and specifically for residents of Community District 6, NYCHA, and Gowanus. Does the committee want to ask some questions to get us going?
Sure, I'll start. Thanks for the presentation. Could you please talk a little bit more about the Apprentice NYC program? That's an existing program typically based in the Brooklyn Army Terminal at Sunset Park. So could you talk about how the program is going to change to meet the intentions of the POA? And I know you mentioned the RFP for the recruitment partner, but specifically with the Apprentice NYC program, what kinds of curriculum changes, if any, are you doing to make sure that it's accessible to Gowanus residents?
Yeah, it was really important to us to understand that one of the core components of the ask in the POA was about bridge training, because barriers to occupational training are real. So there's fundamental information that needs to be, made as part of existing curriculum that really help with knowledge and skill attainment. So we wanted to build bridge curriculum into the training program. It will keep everybody starting at the same place. So you don't have a separate standalone bridge, but the bridge is actually built into one cohesive long-term training program. So you go from pre-apprenticeship, which is our bridge portion, into the occupational training, right into on-the-job training with employer partners. So we think that that's an important way. Those are guaranteed job placements because they're apprenticeships with manufacturing and industrial partners with the city. So we're excited about the ability to offer that. The recruitment strategy is really important. We are very, very intentional in thinking about how can we get CB6 NYCHA residents to be a part of this opportunity. We think that it's important to engage a partner who has those deep relationships and can amplify this information so that people are aware. People can't participate in things that they don't know about and haven't heard about. So we want that participation to be elevated because there's a knowledge of what the programming is, when it takes place, and what's involved.
Great. And can you talk a little bit about whether this program, and specifically the recruitment portion of it, will happen every year for 3 years, as was the intention of the POA? Does the agency know that yet, or is that still TBD?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. I think that's a great question. We are obviously very much looking at the language in the POA and the intention of the POA and how we think about the cadence of the cohorts that will come out as we do and launch this programming. We're working with our partners right now and finalizing that, so there will be some recruitment support. These are long-term trainings, especially when you're thinking about Apprentice NYC. So the cadence in which those cohorts can happen is going to be a very big part of how we think about that partnership with a recruitment partner. Have I answered your question? Please feel free.
I think so. Does that mean that I'm curious about the funding for the whole program. Does that mean that there is funding available to make sure that there is training every year for 3 years?
Are you talking about specifically the recruitment partner, or are you talking about the Apprentice NYC?
For Apprentice NYC.
Yeah, so there's going to be available funding as Daniel just mentioned, the investment is being protected. We don't have any information that is at this time communicating to us that any of that investment is at risk. So while this investment is in existence with the city, we are going to be offering cohorts at a cadence that really is thoughtful because the program is long. And it takes quite a bit of time for the skill mastery, so we want to ensure that people have an opportunity to succeed, there's an opportunity for employers to engage and connect to talent, and that there's knowledge and skill attainment throughout the entire process. So we do intend to have multiple cohorts. The exact time in which all of them will launch is being finalized. Hi.
Just a quick question. You talk about community partners in Gowanus.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give some examples?
So we are actually looking for a community partner. That's what the RFP is for, to identify a partner who can help us make those strategic, comprehensive recruitment strategy to engage the community and make them aware of these job training opportunities. So that is whom we'll determine once an RFP proposal, that's a winning proposal, is selected. We'll identify who that is.
Maybe not everyone will see that there's a partner.
Yeah, so we've actually done a listserv. We've done, actually this evening, kind of a blast to more than 200 organizations who could be, hopefully thought partners in this work. So we want someone to have relationships with this area, for sure. That is what we're asking of the RFP. We're asking for providers who have a recruitment strategy to help us engage people from Community Board 6, NYCHA residents. So proposals will need to respond, how they're going to do that thoughtfully, and how they have those relationships, and what that strategy will look like.
So could it go to, let's say, somebody in Staten Island because they're good at it?
I don't know who it can go to. We'd have to wait until the RFP process is concluded and the winning proposal is selected.
But is there criteria
100%. Like
dedicated
having experience in serving the populations that we're looking to serve, and having experience being a person with local relationships is definitely criteria that we're going to highly consider when we look at the organizations and the people who are proposing.
Okay, question from the note card. Who will provide the training courses, machinist, apprentices, HVAC?
So we're finalizing that programming right now. We'll be able to come back to you in March with an update. We're procuring those providers and finalizing their contracts. So we are happy to share that once those are all solidified. But we have partners in mind who are doing this work, and we are very, very proud of the work that we've done in these spaces. So we want to continue to really perform and deliver high quality trainings, and we'll tell you the providers as soon as those contracting and procurement methods conclude.
Question from the audience. Yes.
Hi, one is just a clarification.
Sure.
You are not really going to be spending money that was awarded as part of this, you're not actually going to be spending money that was given to you in terms of the Gowanus rezoning package until sometime after the middle of 2024, right?
So the RFP was released today.
No, I know the RFP, but that money was put in your budget or was allocated toward you by the city council in 2021, and sort of the pardon. So the question is, in terms of recruitment or moving forward, has there been anything else? Because it's really hard to envision, and maybe to be more specific, the idea of giving funds to people who were displaced.
Yeah.
Okay, that's also something that's not going to happen now until 2024. Do you have any idea? Has anybody come to your agency and asked for assistance, or do you have any idea of the scope, the number of people who were displaced due to the rezoning? Did you do any sort of fact-finding to see who your audience might be?
Yes.
Are you asking about residents displaced or the businesses that may have been displaced?
That's your baby that you could give them some money.
Yes.
If they can, and you're doing an RFP and they'll have to prove a lot of things and it won't be released until 2024, right?
I can clarify.
Yeah, okay.
So for the grant program, there is no solicitation process. We have to go through a rulemaking process to lay out what the rules of the program are going to be, detailed criteria for eligibility, application to the program, and the proofs of actual displacement directly by the rezoning, actual business loss. I'll give you an example, because I know talking in abstractions can be confusing. Say, there's a requirement that the business was operating in the rezoning area in November 2021. So what would it mean if a business had signed a lease but hadn't yet, made $1 in that space? Would that business be considered operating under the rule? Those are the types of details that we're trying to work through and will communicate in the rulemaking. But there's not a procurement process related to delivering the grant program. We're going to deliver the grant program with SBS staff. And the program as set out in the POA also requires, in addition to the direct displacement, that the business have a loss associated with the rezoning. So that means that we need to be able to compare something like profitability, revenue, before the rezoning to some period of time after rezoning to demonstrate loss, or come up with other ways for those businesses to demonstrate that they had a loss, right?
Displacement and loss.
Yes,
Correct.
as set out in the POA, it's displacement, loss, and then relocation. And then what we can cover is a reimbursement of the moving expenses for that relocation. That's what's set out.
All right, and I guess part of the question was, you don't have any idea of what that universe of people is who might be coming to you to apply for that kind of funding?
Yeah, we don't have clarity on the exact number of businesses because the entities can be complicated. Site control can be complicated. Some of it we will learn through the operation of the program, but we are working very closely with HPD to understand the zoning changes that were made parcel by parcel, and we will express in the draft rule, all of the borough blocks and lots that were covered by the rezoning. So any businesses that believe they met the eligibility criteria should come forward.
And so nobody's approached you yet?
Not one business has come forward yet to, ask for rezoning. That doesn't mean that businesses aren't poised. Certainly our goal is to be completely transparent about the process, and every eligible business, we want to attempt to meet their needs through this program.
Can I do follow-up?
Yes, please.
So thank you for that, and I think SJ's hitting on something. This point of agreement specifically to business displacement assistance is one that's in every point of agreement for every neighborhood rezoning, and it's pretty underutilized across the board, and I think it's largely underutilized because so much of the displacement happens actually leading up to the rezoning, right? Or in the very early stages of the rezoning. And so I think it would really behoove the agency to take a hard look, I think, with local bids, with business advocates, folks that are in the know in the rezoning areas to design something that really meets the need at the right moment in time. I think a lot of this has to be put in place before the ink is final on a rezoning. The intention's there, but it's not really meeting. I think the intention is good, but it's not meeting its intended purpose. And then I think the other question that SJ started, and I maybe want to finish. So we're at FY24, fiscal year 24 for the city, and the points of agreement, there's multiple funding commitments for workforce development, $250,000 a year for 5 years, starting in FY23, ending in FY27, so that's, $1.25 million. You've got another $605,000 every year for 5 years. On the piece that's just been recently sent out on RFP. So I think part of the question is, and if you don't have the answer now, if you can come back to us about, so we want to make sure that the commitment for the investment in this local community is honored, right? Regardless of what's happening in the city's budget. There is need in this community, and it's underutilized, it's underserved, in this area. I think the wealth of the overall community board masks need that exists, in particular, for underserved residents in public housing, which is one of the reasons when we negotiated this point of agreement, and we were very involved in negotiating this point of agreement, we made sure that it wasn't just Gowanus, but that it was Community Board 6, to make sure that it really served a broader population. So, if you can come back on, we want to make sure the money doesn't disappear.
We hate disappearing money too.
100%. And I think we will just say to Michelle, because I think you're making really great points. When we think about this partnership, at least from the workforce trainings, when we're thinking about the recruitment outreach partner that we're looking for, it is for those relationships with Community Board 6 residents who are low-income and NYCHA residents. That is at the forefront of the way we're thinking of providing opportunity, and that is at the forefront of the way we're thinking about hoping to partner with a recruitment outreach specialist who can navigate those spaces with dexterity, with knowledge, and with familiarity with what the community needs. So we're really, really, really looking forward to that.
One final question from the audience. Was there a hand over here? No hand. Okay. Thank you very much for your work.
This is
Thank you for
wonderful
your
to be able to speak
partnership.
to you. Thank
Really.
you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
And thank you to everybody. Yeah. Sure, one second, folks. Just SBS wants to speak briefly.
Good evening. Sorry for being the barrier between you and home right now. But Haris Khan with the Department of Small Business Services. Just wanted to note that there was September 29th, there was very serious flooding, heavy rainfall, and the federal government last week shared that there will be federal assistance available to impacted business owners and homeowners, loans up to $2 million for those businesses that are impacted. So if you're interested in applying for those loans, if you are an impacted business owner or an impacted homeowner, feel free to speak to us. We'll be here tonight. The SBA has set up 2 disaster centers, but beyond the SBA, our SBS Business Solution Centers across the city can also help you in applying for these loans. And we can also schedule a one-on-one appointment with a financial advisor to help you go through this application process. So we'll be here after the session ends if you'd want to discuss and if you're an impacted business owner. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. As a reminder, all questions will be answered, so please get them in if you think of them later. Next public meeting will be late March 2024. Happy holidays, stay safe. Thanks very much.